Hallå ja, hallå? Hallå, hallå? Ja, då börjar vi. Ni är alla hjärtligt välkomna till vår konferens Publikutveckling från A till Ö. Och vi är väldigt glada över att det är så stort intresse. Det är fortfarande en lång väntelista på att få delta här. Vi som hälsar välkommen är Kultur i Väst och Producentbyrån i samarbete. Och jag heter Nils Wiklander, jag är konsulent för publikutveckling och arbetar tillsammans med Helene Liljedal som sitter här. Och vi har samarbetat kring det här under en längre tid tillsammans med Producentbyrån. Och Malin fortsätter här.
Yes, my name is Malin Enberg, and from now on we will speak English, because this is a conference that today will be in English and tomorrow in Scandinavian. So my name is Malin Enberg and I'm from Producentbyrån, and I work in this project together with Dag, also from Producentbyrån. And I'm not really sure but I think we will keep it this short. And I would like to introduce our moderator, Nils Righolt.
Well, in Swedish, tack så mycket. In English, thanks a lot for having me here. I will do my utmost to guide us through the next 2 days. Today in English, tomorrow in Scandinavian, Swedish with a very strong Danish accent. I hope you'll bear with me. So we are here today because Kultur i Väst and Producentbyrån has created a program where they kind of want to touch on what has become one of the most discussed, reflected topics of cultural policy these years. Audience development is written into the criterias at the audiences or the art support organizations all over Europe. It's one of the main criterias in the Creative Europe program. It's a main criteria in the programs for the Nordic Cultural Foundation, the Kulturkontakt Nord, Nordbook, etc., etc. It's all about the people we are here to serve. That should not be very surprising, actually, but to some extent it is. The focus, when you look at it from a cultural political point of view, has for many, many years been on the artists and their complete independence and right to do whatever they would like to do, because in a civilized democracy we don't want to tell the artists what to do. That is not how we do it. However, that is not necessarily the same as the artist actually being given a microphone and being able to express themselves in a wider context. We are in an arts museum. I used to be a museum director myself. And to some extent, my utmost task would be not to select, but to deselect. I would receive applications from artists all over Sweden, all over Denmark, all over Europe, wanting to exhibit in our arts facilities. And I would curate, together with my team of curators, which exhibitions we thought would be best. And at that time, and this is not very long ago, the audience was not necessarily the first thing that came to mind. The first thing that came to mind was profile of the institution, how we kind of saw, understood, interpreted ourselves in the family of institutions. What we considered would be appropriate, contemporary, significant, important, kicking ass, whatever thing we would like to do. And then maybe somebody, probably from the communication department, would say, what about the audience? How should we communicate to them? And of course, this is not rocket science. We made, of course we did, splendid exhibitions for ourselves and our colleagues and friends. and the well-educated, white, middle class, that kind of supports are the bridges beyond arts institutions all over Europe. But that doesn't really work anymore. We are living in a still more fragmentized society. Atomized, a researcher told me, he said, well, people today are much more content-driven. They're much more about competences and narratives and stories and relationships and relevance than they were just 10 years ago. As a result of technical solutions, new ways of doing things, new opportunities, but also a new set of relating to democracy or to society as such. And they expect something else from the temples. They don't expect the temples to be temples. They don't come to the Göteborgs Kunstmuseum in the expectation to go in as a believer, hear the high priest tell about why art is so important in society and why we should just love it and enjoy it, and then dance heavily happy out into the streets afterwards. That's not what it's about. They come with a critical mind. They want to be related to. They want the exhibitions to have relevance. They want to be part of something. So how does that fit into audience development? What is this term yet? What do we mean? What are we talking about when we talk about development? Audience development is not something new. Heather and Lisa will confirm that this has been kind of on the agenda in the UK for the last 25 years or such. And I myself has been working in the field for at least 15 years. So it's not that it just came out of nothing and we suddenly began to understand what audience is about. But in the one end of audience development and the one end of interpretation, we have the box office logics, selling tickets, reaching out. We have segmentation models. We have new ways of thinking about the audience. And we have, at the other end, institutions, projects, trying to work cross-sectorially, creating sustainable long-term relationships with audiences they already have, and more with audiences they don't have, which is kind of scary, because how do you approach somebody you know very little or almost nothing about? In these 2 days, we will give you a qualified picture. Of course, not a very detailed picture, but a qualified picture of some of the differences and some of the topics we are dealing with when dealing with audience engagement or audience development. We have asked, you have asked a qualified panel of people to come over from the UK, Heather Maitland, Lisa Baxter, lots of good speakers from Sweden, to give a kind of picture, where are we? What is it in a Swedish context? And one of the things that strikes me as a Dane, having this written into the assignment, I remember the chairman of the Royal Theatre coming out 5 years ago, kind of shaking her head saying, the new result agreement between the Royal Theatre and the Danish Arts Council basically says 5 things: audience, 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 and audience. Ha ha. But in Sweden there has been a kind of non-existing public debate about audience engagement, audience development, which for me, with my long love and admiration from the Swedish model, is kind of strange. Because in many ways you are dealing with your audiences already, of course. And you are doing this in so many different ways, and you have a whole package of good experiences. But there is a lack of terminology, and there is a lack of refined dialogue, at least in the public space. Maybe it's behind the walls. We will learn that through it. Maybe you are already there. But if you're not, I was instructed to tell you, you should see these 2 days as a kind of step, another step in the direction of having a more diverse, qualified dialogue on audience development in a Swedish context. So before I'll give the microphone and the floor, the stage, to the first speaker, I want you to know a few things. You have papers and pens on your chairs. It is a packed program, and maybe this is because I'm part of it. I don't know. This could be a disease. I have a tendency of overpacking my own conferences, at least. But in this case, it is quite an intense and packed program, so there won't be a lot of time for Q&As, question and answers. But there will be time tomorrow afternoon. So if you're not able to give a quick question and have a quick reply from the speakers, we will ask you to write them down and then give them to Maitland, who will make sure that these different questions are all part of our common dialogue and debate tomorrow afternoon. So please use the papers, use the pens. There's another thing, the doors are closed. And in my experience, and this is quite a nice group, we're not too many and we're not too few. So please participate, think, give your impressions, reflections and thoughts space and express them so we can all reflect on them and discuss them together. So that's an invitation to you. Another thing is that we will be streamed, and that's why we will kind of be quite firm on time and follow the time schedules, maybe even be slightly ahead of time. That will be my intention, at least. Not cutting our speakers too early, but still slightly ahead of time. So with those words, I think it's time to introduce the first speaker. Now, how should I introduce you, Heather? You should actually maybe introduce yourself, because you have such a vast CV of different kinds of experiences. But Heather Maitland, from the UK, please come on stage and join me.
Very much indeed, thank you. Hi, good morning. Wow. Yeah. I wrote a book about audience development in 1992, and it was weird. I'd been asked to do it because people in the UK were talking about audience development, and the Arts Council went, hang on a minute, we're talking about this thing and we don't know what it is. I reread it the other day. I don't believe any of it. It was really interesting because there was a belief that there were a whole load of barriers to arts attendance, and if we took those barriers away, people would magically emerge from the undergrowth and flock towards their nearest arts organisation. And it just didn't work like that. It's a lot more complicated than that. So I'm going to kind of reflect on a lot of the work I've been doing since then across Europe. About 3/4 of my work is not in the UK, so I've got some English examples, but also lots of examples from elsewhere. And what I'm going to do is an A to Z of audience development, so rattle through a whole load of examples and ideas. I'm going to sort of talk a bit about what is audience development. I hate that question. I'm going to talk a bit about what it can do for you. I'm going to talk also about how we might go about it, but mainly how not to go about it, because I think that's easier to say what's not a good idea than what is a good idea. So let's leap in. A to Z, okay? I thought, let's go for it. Let's do the A to Z. So let's start with the middle of the alphabet. I is for identification. How can we tell what's audience development and what's not audience development? Well, unfortunately, it's almost impossible, because audience development can look very, very different depending on who's doing it, who they're doing it with, what the art is that they're developing audiences for, what kind of organisation they are, what kind of communities they serve. There are so many variables that actually audience development can look very, very different from one organisation to another. It may not even be called audience development. We went through a period in the UK where we started using the phrase audience engagement. Lisa was telling me they're talking about audience... Where's Lisa? There's Lisa. Audience engagement in Australia? Yeah. And I think it's because other areas of government, like the society, talks about things like community engagement. And I'm not sure there's a difference. I think it's just good audience development, but we've started in the UK calling it audience development again. I don't know why, but we have. God knows. So it could be anything, and actually that makes life very difficult. So let's have a go at a definition. So I went and I asked a random selection of people doing audience development and said, what is audience development? And they said all of these things. More people more often. They said growing audiences. They said it's the same as marketing. And actually several people said that, and I was quite surprised about that. The confusion is that the process of audience development can look very, very like marketing. And actually, probably if you have a definition of marketing from outside the arts, where marketing just covers anything you want it to cover, actually probably it does look very similar to marketing. Marketing is about size, but audience development is about the kinds of people in the audience. It's about developing relationships with audiences. And actually, this is where the cynic in me goes, I wonder if audience development is just a polite word for marketing that our artistic leaders will accept. That's me being very cynical. I don't really believe that, except when I'm very depressed. And we spent years, didn't we, Lisa, talking about what is audience development. You know, you had a conference and there'd be clusters of marketers in corners discussing what audience development is. I'd like to suggest it's a complete waste of time trying to actually make that definition work. So let's move on really quickly. I think it's just about persuading people that the arts has something to offer them, and then developing relationships with them, you know, giving them big hugs and developing relationships. Even that's got its problem, though, because I think we went through a great long phase in the UK where we were doing audience development to people and not with them, that actually a lot of our organisations were seeing audiences as passive recipients of these projects rather than co-producers of the projects. I think it was championed a lot of the time by very specific people within arts organisations. Lots of champions from marketing departments, lots of champions from education and learning departments as well. But I'm not sure that's a good idea, because I think the audience development toolkit is much, much bigger than that. It involves programming, of course, but actually they're the bit that tends to get left out of this process. It's about where you do your artistic work. It's about marketing, of course. It's about education, of course. It's about customer care. It's about the whole experience of the organisation. Now, what's wrong with having champions? What's wrong with that passionate person beavering away in a corner of an organisation every 2 minutes going, but what about the audience? Well, it's because audience development becomes an add-on. It becomes an extra. And I'd like to suggest that leads to not terribly useful audience development. How not to develop audiences? Well, if you don't involve your colleagues, you might be saying to people, come in, welcome, welcome, and actually the rest of your staff are giving off signals that actually this is not for the likes of them. So, why is the most important question? I think we get very excited by audience development because it's an opportunity to do these really amazing projects. But actually, the most important bit is the boring bit, and it's about what is your organisation trying to achieve? I love Patrick Sanders. He's Irish and he does a lot of work with Irish arts organisations, and this is his Lord of the Rings audience development plan. Isn't it amazing? There we all are, and our quest is the tall tower. And actually, audience development has to start with the organisation's artistic, financial and social goals, whatever they may be. And if they don't, you're first of all doing audience development to people, and secondly, if they don't, you're doing it in a corner where it's an extra and an add-on, and the rest of your organisation doesn't really believe in it. I know Lisa's going to talk a lot more about mission and a lot more about why it's important that it should be at the heart of what you do. So how not to develop audiences? Well, have the organisations pulling in different directions. Yeah. So understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important to your organisation is fundamentally important. So that's all I'm going to say about definitions, because I think it's not a productive discussion. So let's leap straight in. Let's look at some examples. What can audience development do for you, and how have other people done it? Well, I think it's great because you can persuade people to engage with an unfamiliar art form. And this is some of the most fun stuff, I think. This is an example from the UK where 7 opera companies got together and they had done some research, and they discovered that audiences who did not go to opera just didn't get it. They loved the arts, and they loved it because the arts made them feel amazing emotions, that it was a reflection on their lives, that it enabled them to contemplate themselves, get a better understanding of themselves. It was exciting. Yeah? And unfortunately, the people who didn't go to opera thought that opera was boring, long, and that they wouldn't understand it. Universally, that's what people said. So how do you get people to engage? Well, what they did was a huge live streaming project where the organisations joined together to show people inside opera. And they produced this amazing trailer. Here we go. Thank you. It's smooth. Thank you. It's simple, isn't it? Very simple, very clear, and very directly related to the research about what people who didn't engage with opera thought about it. Interestingly, though, I've been trying to find out how it worked, and nobody will tell me. Not quite sure why. Thank you very much indeed. You are wonderful. That was just so beautifully done. Thank you. Persuading people to engage with something more challenging, so to move outside their comfort zone. I think this is really interesting. Does anyone work with literature? We've got people doing, yeah, fabulous, yeah. This is a really simple idea, but it's done so wholeheartedly and so thoroughly that I think it's amazing. It's happening in the east of England, and I think it's something like the 5th year it's happened, but it's about getting people who read on the beach in the summer holiday. It's probably the only time in the year that they get any space in their lives to read books. And it's about persuading them to engage with something a little bit more challenging than the usual bunkbuster that people read on the beach. So, stuck for something great to read, try something new this summer. And it's all about engaging people with 8 books voted for by a panel of readers, and then all sorts of extraordinary things happening around it. So book clubs, events, all sorts of things going on. So you've got the 8 books, and then you've got reviews by readers. You've got lots of extra information, including videos with authors talking about their work. You've got a virtual book club. You've got a blog, you've got reviewing where you can win prizes if you submit reviews, and then you've got live stuff. So all the bookshops, all the libraries are stocking the books and giving them display space, which in the UK is a miracle. You've got Meet the Author events, you've got a live book club in lots of different places, you've got library events, you've got reader workshops for people who are lacking basic reading skills, and then a quiz. So loads and loads of stuff going on. What I love about it is it's been so beautifully thought through about how this very simple idea can engage with the biggest number of people. This is big. It's not that expensive because what people are doing is focusing what they're already doing in terms of activities and events, but they're focusing it much more clearly on a set of goals and focusing much more clearly on their mission, which is, I think, why the idea is so simple. It's because it's so mission-led. You know, what do we want to do? We want to get people to read more interesting things. It can be very simple, though, persuading people to do something more challenging. So this is, oh, my brain's gone completely blank. Atilas, a Danish ensemble where they had been doing a whole load of concerts, but they were just doing concerts of contemporary music. What they did was moved them out of the concert hall into pubs and cafes, and they gave it this really interesting title called Brand New Tuesdays. Why do you want to go to strange contemporary music? Well, because it's about experiencing something brand new. So it's really just about repackaging what they're doing to communicate much more effectively with audiences. So it could be as simple as that. It could be even simpler still. So this is an independent cinema showing cultural film, art house film, specialist film, whatever you want to call it. And this is the one in a rural place on the edge of Wales. Would you click on that if you found that in the Google search results? You wouldn't, would you? But this is another one, also run by volunteers. Hitchin Films, bringing cinema back to Hitchin. Great films from around the world twice a month. Just simply putting a meta description so that it appears in the search results means that anybody searching for cinema and their local town is persuaded to click on that rather than the local multiplex. And it's as simple as that. And the first one has just not bothered with the detail. The second one has got hugely more people engaging with what they do because they think through the little things that make a difference. What else can you do? Well, you can get people to engage more often. All sorts of things to do with this. I love this. This is an Irish venue, and this is the box office. And all they've done is turned one of the screens round in the box office and put a PowerPoint presentation on so that anybody waiting to buy tickets can see what's coming next. Persuades them to come more often. And they've shown that people are buying more shows on average per visit to the box office than they did before they had it. So this is really simple, didn't cost anything. Slight head scratching about how you get the PowerPoint presentation to loop. But once they'd solved that one, simple. It can be really complicated. So this is the Irish Film Institute, and this is their loyalty card scheme. So every time anybody comes to the box office with a loyalty card, they get points. And what do points mean? Points mean free tickets. So they're saving up for free tickets. But just have a look at these numbers. So on average, they are attending 4.9 films a year, which is slightly more than, I think it's about a film and a half more than the general audience. They're buying 22,000 tickets, but look, they're giving away 16,000 tickets free because of points. How on earth does that maths add up? I mean, they're giving away so much, aren't they? And any thoughts about why they think this is worthwhile? Any thoughts? Would you do this? Yeah, I mean, 4.9 isn't that great. What, up at the back there? Yeah, they bring someone with them. Absolutely, yeah. Any other thoughts about why they think this is worthwhile? It's about getting their names and addresses so that email addresses, whatever, so they can communicate with them. Because cinema audiences just appear 5 minutes before the show, and you can't engage with them. Just simply by having this scheme, they've collected the name and addresses of 4,500 people they wouldn't otherwise have, and they can talk to them. Otherwise, they can't talk to their audience unless it's through like posters in the venue. So that's why they think it's worthwhile. That's the reason why they do it. This is a tiny little venue. Very strange building. It used to be where the army practiced marching up and down, and it looks like a castle, military castle, but it's didn't have a use, so they've turned it into an art centre. And what they do is they find all the people who've bought a ticket for the first time each month, and they send them this saying, look at all the other things we do. Wouldn't you like to engage with this as well? So it says, hello, to thank you for your first visit to Lincoln Drill Hall, and because we'd love to see you again, we'd like to offer you £2 off the lowest ticket price for the following events. Interestingly, audiences said they weren't interested in the £2 off. What they loved was being shown 5 or 6 events to choose from rather than the 60 events that were in the season brochure. So it was about helping people choose, and it meant that they could make a simple choice going, oh, look at this, let's engage with this. Audience development can get people to come somewhere unfamiliar. This is an example from Northern Ireland. Now, in the UK, galleries tend not to talk to each other terribly well. Is that unfair, Lisa?
No, not at all.
And I loved this because it was a really, really friendly way of showing people where else they could go. So anybody who came to one venue got given this, and it just simply shows them all the other places that they could go and see art. And the average attendance at art exhibitions in this city, Derry, went up like exponentially, 4 times higher than it was. Okay, it had something to do with the fact that City of Culture was going on, so this project was done through City of Culture. But I think it's still 4-fold increase. It's still pretty amazing in terms of frequency of attendance at the visual arts. I love this. Why do people go to galleries? By accident. 30 to 40% of UK visits to galleries are by accident. They just happen to be walking somewhere. Oh, look, it's a gallery. And they get sucked in. It keeps being repeated. So how do we not develop audiences? Well, by hiding the art. This is true. They've been very noble and said, I can show you this, but this is a real gallery, big gallery, loads of money going into it, and this is absolutely true. It's part of the museum, and this is the entranceway to the museum, and you can see all the way through, and that beautiful, beautiful archway is where all the archaeology is, and it's hugely popular because you can go and see an Iron Age bog body, a real mummified person. Can you see the art? You can see the shop on the left-hand side. You can see the school area where there's a group of school children doing a project. You can see the archaeology bit. But this is the only indication that there's any art in the building. It's behind a big solid door, and it's in the annex next door, and this is the only indication that the weird glass building next door is a gallery. Yeah? Lisa is going to talk a lot about how we stop making this kind of mistake, because this is about simply not putting ourselves in our audience's heads and seeing the experience that they see. Why did this organisation ask me to come in and work with them? Because nobody was going into the gallery. And I felt very silly coming up with a report that said, it's because you're not telling anybody you've got one. You know, I like to earn my fees, you know. And you can get people to come for the first time. Oh, this was the point where I really, really wanted to show you this amazing Polish video where a quartet run by musicians called Kvartludium has worked to engage the under fives with contemporary classical music. So it's the same program they play to adults, but it's for very small children. And they've done the most amazing work looking at how they engage, and they've evaluated it. So there's lots of material on the New Music, New Audiences website that's going to be emerging shortly that I think Sina Toft-Hannibal is going to talk about tomorrow. So that's really worth looking at. Unfortunately, the video was so huge we couldn't manage to make it work. So I'm going to talk about an American example. Very simple, but absolutely about understanding audiences and putting yourself in their shoes. So they like to call themselves America's Orchestral Academy. Basically, it's a postgraduate program where on campus they've got a beautiful arts centre and it's full of classical music. Do the students go? No, not at all. It's that front door to the venue. Can you see the road along here? They have to go along there to get anywhere. So they've got this vast number of students walking backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and not a single one goes inside the concert hall. So what they did was mini concerts. $2.50, so really cheap. But most importantly, only 30 minutes long. Performed at 7:30, 8:30 and 9:30. You know, this is students going backwards and forwards so repeatedly. And the musicians talked, and complimentary videos and images and discussions as the concert progressed by the musicians themselves. 2/3 of the people who went to one of them stayed to go to the following one. Yeah? So it's about that little risk, dealing with that little risk factor, because it's only 30 minutes long. Actually, you're not going to be trapped inside this horrible big building, you know, for huge lengths of time. But if you want to, you can stay on. So it's and then you can go on into town afterwards and do whatever it is you're doing, clubbing, whatever. So it's really interesting. And suddenly they were engaging with students, and then this led on to developing other forms of concert that engaged with them. Interestingly, the ones that were kind of classical music light were less popular than the ones that really did burrow into the interesting areas of the classical music repertoire, even though these audiences were not classical music listeners. So they didn't want pretend classical music, they wanted the real thing. What else can it do? It can form a closer relationship with the arts organisation. So this is the hug bit. How do you develop a relationship with them? Well, how not to develop audiences. This is a really interesting theatre company that's been running since the 70s that is about cultural democracy. It's about theatre for real people, by real people. And unfortunately, 30% of all the ticket buyers that they've ever had since they got the records started have been once and never, ever come back. And they thought it's because people hate what we do. But actually, when you talk to them, it's not at all. They enjoyed the experience. 14,000 people that they've just lost because it's a revolving door. You know, people go in and straight out again. Yeah. I think Dublin Fringe Festival deal with this really well, because they work really hard to understand where their audiences are coming from. So one of the things they do is fringe kin. Kin means family, very Irish word, kin. So the fringe is not only friendship, it's family. By choosing one or more of the packages below, you take your own unique place in the fringe family and in turn support our year-round work. Like a champion aunt, generous uncle, sound little brother, or confirmation-flushed niece, Catholic country. So when you know about confirmation, yeah. So, yeah. And what they've done is they've looked at why people might want to engage and given them packages that actually respond to that. So savvy is about price, savvy is about discounts. But actually, the next one is for all those people who were not engaging with the company because they didn't want a discount, they wanted to support it. So it says, do a good deed by donating and get a credit in the programme. It's philanthropy, man. Literally all you get is the credit in the programme. You're just giving to support the organisation. And then there's the fun time of the people who actually just wanted to engage with artists and have fun with them. So launch party and the Fringe Awards and a pass to the Fringe Club. And then finally, it's about the people who want to think about art. So for this one, they get access to the Fringe Fuse evenings and exclusive events with the festival director and artists. They're doing nothing different apart from empathising with the audience and understanding what makes the audience tick and then creating experiences that match that. And boy, oh boy, Lisa is our expert in that. I think in the UK, nobody else understands audiences more than she does. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're going to do with all this stuff to help us understand audiences.
No pressure.
No pressure. Ta-da. This is an American example. You know how difficult it is when you're a festival? Who runs festivals? Stick your hand up if you run festivals. Ooh, quite a lot of you, yeah. It happens. Then there's this sort of 12 months of resounding silence, and then it happens again. And I really like this as a really simple way of engaging with audiences in between festivals. This is an enlargement of that bit. What they're saying is simply saying to the audiences, tell us which piece you most want to hear again. So you can comment and vote for your favourite pieces, and then pieces from the festival will be broadcast on the public radio station in a special programme. And loads of ways to engage, all of which involve giving contact details so that the festival can engage with them throughout the year. Very simple, very, very clever, and very successful. Or it can be really, really simple, like instead of using Facebook to make announcements about, oh, look, we've got a show. Oh, look, we've got another show. Oh, we've got a very interesting exhibition coming up, which is what most arts organisations in most of Europe do with Facebook. Actually, they're asking questions and getting people to involve, and they're actually being social on social media. And this is about the duck race in this lovely little Irish town. There's the duck, and we have to make suggestions for how to dress it up for the duck race. Very small, very simple, very easy, doesn't cost any money, but actually engages audiences rather than just does things to them. And finally, developing people's understanding and appreciation of the arts. Interesting. I actually love what, I think Lisa's going to talk a bit about Australia. They've got an amazing toolkit that they've developed for how you actually talk to audiences and get an understanding of their depth of engagement. It's really worth having a look at. Australia Council for the Arts, Artistic Engagement Toolkit. Artistic Vibrancy. Ooh, wow. Ooh, cool. This is the Wellcome Collection, which is a rather strange art museum that's about art and medicine. But they really think through the experience of the audience. And it's about giving people lots and lots of different ways of engaging. So there's actually quite a lot of art where it's not explained. You know, you get the little standard label, but that's it. But you also get things like, can you see the headphones where you've got an interview with the artist? We've got things like this where you've got your normal labels that engage and explain and ask questions, but then if you want anything deeper, you can open the drawers and actually see the research behind what's going on at the top. So lots of layered interpretation. I love it because sometimes they don't explain. So there's in this exhibition there was this amazing bookcase that literally reached floor to ceiling. And you looked at the books and you were thinking, oh, what's going on here? And it didn't explain. And suddenly it dawned on you that they were all self-help books about helping yourself be healthy. And they'd just gone to Waterstones, the bookshop, and gone, give us all your self-help books. And there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It really made you think and question your own feelings about that. It doesn't have to be expensive, though. This is Italy, Turin. There's an amazing hotel where the guy's mad about art, and he's turned over the ground floor of the hotel into an art gallery. And does anyone recognise what this is? I'll get a bit closer. What's that? I bet most of you got one, or used to have one. It's an iPod Shuffle. Yeah, absolutely. And it's in the case that they sell them in. And what they've done is they've screwed the case to the wall, made a hole in it so you can press the button to play an interview with the artist. So there are about 12 or 14 of these. How much is a shuffle nowadays? Not much. Really cheap, really simple, very, very clever. So, you know, you can do this kind of thing without spending loads and loads of money. So those are my examples. So let's reflect on the how question. H is for how. How do we go about this? Why are those very, very, very different examples all good examples of audience development? Well, I think anyway. It's about how you go about choosing ideas. I think the most dangerous thing you can do is see audience development as a to-do list. Ooh, we should borrow this scheme from this lot. Let's do that one. And a big tick. Ooh, we're an awesome organisation because we're doing, I don't know, test drive the arts. And actually, sadly, because audience development is so varied, because you're all doing different kinds of art, you're all doing it for different reasons, in different communities, targeting different kinds of audiences, you can't copy a scheme from somebody else, because if you do, it won't work. The starting point has got to be thinking and planning. God, that's so boring, isn't it? We're such doey people, aren't we? We'd much rather get out and do stuff than have to think and plan and have meetings. But actually, without the thinking and the planning, you will choose an idea that won't work. If you think and plan, you can walk in the shoes of your audience, you know, get inside their heads and get a sense and create an idea that will actually work. What's the starting point for that? It's this thing about understanding your audience. Has everybody got little bits of paper? Have you all got little bits of paper? This is the point where your little bits of paper come in, that you've all been handed 2 little bits of paper and you will need them now. So grab your 2 little bits of paper. We're going to play a silly game. And everybody can play, and I'm not going to be horrid to anybody. But it's just interesting to see what happens if we start making some guesses about audiences. So, I'd like you to guess what percentage of adults in Sweden say they have been to a museum or gallery in the past 12 months. And an adult counts as anybody 16 or over who can make their own decision about going. So adult means 16 or over. So what percentage of adults? Write it really, really big on your piece of paper, and then when you're ready, hold it up. And I'm just going to read out some of the... So I need to be able to read it from here. So really big so I can read it. And I'm just going to read them out. So you've got another 5 seconds to write down your guess. 5, 4, 3, everybody's got to play. 2, 1, hold up your piece of paper. So I'm seeing 20, 10, 45, 15, 47, 35, 2, 6, 35, 10, 4, 70, 17, 10, 15, 47, 8, 34, 65, 30, 55, 30, 27. So I think we're going from 2 to 74. That's interesting, isn't it? Ooh, should we do another one? Turn your piece of paper over and have a go at this. Bigger would be better. Bigger and bolder would be better because I'm squinting. What percentage of adults in Sweden say they've been to the theatre in the past 12 months? What percentage of adults say they've been to the theatre in the past 12 months? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll start at the front this time. 15, 15, 30, 30, 25, 10, 5, 19, 55, 15, 27, 10, 30, 25, 45, 18, 10, 14, 10, 15, the back there, 23, 8, 6, 5, 20, 10, 8, 40, 10, 3. Oh my goodness me, we've done it again, haven't we? I think the lowest one was 3. And we sort of went up to about here, 45. Do a couple more. Whoa! Yeah. Try this one. Have a go at this one. What percentage of adults in Sweden say they have played a musical instrument in the past 12 months? This is adults as in 16 plus. Have a go at this. So this is actually about what they do rather than attending. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, 95, 100, 10, 15, 80, 50, 19, 55, 47, 45, 30, 75, 85, 5, 30, 25, 17, 60, 15, 55, 35, 22, 10, 75, 30, 65, 80, 65, 15, 25, 40, 50, 20. Wow! I'd like to say that every group I talk to has this issue where guesses vary wildly, so don't worry about it too much. What percentage of people in Sweden say they don't go to ballet, dance or opera because it's too expensive? So they don't go to ballet, dance or opera because it's too expensive. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, 95, 5, 32, 30, 50, 50, 10, 17, 40, 10, 25, 50, 70, 10, 2, 2, 25, 65, 20, 50, 80, 70, 80, 20, 40, 30, 20, 49, 42, 10. Ooh. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? to talk about this, don't you? I'll show you in a second. What happens in terms of our audience development if our guess about how many people play musical instruments is really, really too low? If you're thinking 2, 3, 5%, and actually really it's that, what happens to our audience development? I don't know the answer. You're going to have to tell me. Sorry, say that really loudly. What happens to our audience development in our organisations if we guess 2, 3, 5% play a musical instrument, or 2, 3, 5% go to a museum, when really it's 76% or 22%? What happens if we guess too low?
We have the wrong image.
Yeah, and what does that mean? We underestimate their knowledge, yeah. We've got completely the wrong picture in our heads, yeah.
All the strategies may fail.
The strategies might fail, yes, because we've got this wrong idea in our head and we are underestimating them, yeah. What else might happen? We give them too easy stuff. We don't challenge them because we think they're idiots in the nicest possible way, but they're musical idiots, or they're operatic idiots, or they're theatrical idiots, yeah.
We're insulting our audience.
Yeah, we insult the audience, yep. And I guess if we think the audience is going to be really, really small, we give up too soon as well, I guess, don't we? We just expect a small audience. What about the other way around? What happens if our guesses are over here and we think that 100% of the audience, or 90% of people, or 70% of people play a musical instrument, or we guess far too high about people who go to theatre? What happens to our audience development then, do you think? In what way? Why is it different to the...
They might be stupid.
Yeah?
Not understand.
Yep.
And they might feel that they're supposed to.
Yep. Yeah, what else might happen? They don't come, yeah. Why don't they come? Because they feel so stupid, yeah. What else might happen?
We might feel content, so we don't try and do anything better.
Yeah, we might feel really smug that they're just gagging to come to our events, so we don't bother to explain or to market or to engage or to do audience development, yeah?
We continue to cement the arts as an elite.
Yeah, we continue to cement the arts as an elite activity, yeah? Yeah, beautifully put, yeah. And we become really, really, really depressed because we never get the audience size that we expect, because we think everybody's gagging for it, and actually they're not. So actually that might be some of the reasons why the turnover of people in jobs in the arts is so short. People move on so often because they burn out, because actually maybe our expectations are too high. It's interesting, isn't it? That actually the picture we have of audiences can have such a big impact on how we engage. And so we need to be jolly sure that we have the right picture in our heads. All those figures came from a really, really good piece of research wherein I think it's 27 countries, they did a whole load of interviews with people. And in Sweden there were 1,006 interviews with a sample very carefully modelled to represent the population. So actually this is really good quality research, outside the arts, in the social sector or in business, this is considered to be really, really excellent research. And it's freely available. There's an amazing report And actually it compares every country with all the other countries. So the blue line is the average for the 27 countries, and the yellow line is Sweden. Yeah. So actually, look how far ahead Sweden is. But still, only 22% of adults say they've played a musical instrument in the past year. I'm afraid I just pulled out. There is singing in there, in the research, but we didn't have time to do them all. Yeah, so there is loads and loads and loads of different information in this report. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure singing is included in it, but separate to musical instruments, yeah. Yeah. And actually, it wasn't that high. Yeah. Any questions about this? This is publicly available. I mean, maybe we should put it on a website somewhere so you can download it. Yes.
So, what's the ratio between this and then the survey of how many actually come to museums and theatre?
Okay. In the UK, they looked at this with huge suspicion, the government. So they commissioned this really, really big piece of research by a woman called Orion Brooke, who I think, Lisa, you know Orion, don't you? Yeah, you know Orion. She's amazing. Yeah. Where they actually asked her to break this, to prove that it wasn't accurate. And what happened was that she proved it was jolly accurate. So actually, this is quite a good picture. It's as good as we're ever going to get in terms of what people actually do. Because the questions are phrased so carefully as not to make people feel that they have to say yes in order to be cultured, or say no because that's what people are expected to hear. It's a very, very carefully constructed piece of research. Yeah, so it's, in the UK, it's pretty jolly good. Unfortunately, I don't think it's been tested quite like that in Sweden. And in fact, you were having problems, Doug, finding some data about this, weren't you? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you probably all do research, but it's about your audiences usually, isn't it? So it's about the people already sitting inside, engaging with your organisation, sitting inside your organisation. This is about the population. I think it's really, really useful, to just get that perspective. So we'll do something with this so that you can download it and have a look at it. But yeah, you see the arrows? The arrows are whether it's gone up or down since 2007. So again, Sweden, it's all up, isn't it? You've been developing audiences, yes! And look, mostly across the EU, it's down. So whatever you're doing it right. How not to develop audiences. Do it blindfold. Leap in without getting to inside your audience's head first. And this is why Lisa's session is going to be so important. And this is why this is so good and so successful. It's because it's got inside its audience's heads. So T is for target group. One of the absolute fundamentals is that you can't treat everybody the same. You have to engage with different people. I think people who work in the arts tend to be liberal, and they tend to have quite liberal views, and they like not to discriminate between audiences. But unfortunately, audience development doesn't work unless you target it at specific people, because different people have different understandings and engagement with the arts. So it's about dividing the audience up into bits. So target market is a cluster of people who have something in common, so they're likely to respond in a similar way when you choose the most effective message or the tone of voice, the communication method, or what it is you're offering them, whatever it is. That something in common is likely not to be a description of that that person is not likely not to be about facts. It's likely to be about attitudes, which is why we have to get inside their heads. And targeting is about choosing a group of people to concentrate on. And that's the most important thing. You can't do something for everyone. You can't do the same thing for everyone. You can do lots of different things and reach everyone. The basic premise. The how not to develop audiences as well is about being woolly. That's probably a very English phrase. Do you get being woolly? Being woolly means being vague, you know, being, and that's a sheep because sheep's got wool. It's being fluffy and not very clear. Yeah. So young people interested in music is not a target group. Because there's a bit of a difference between Stephanie here, who's doing music exams, and David, who is really deeply into the kind of music that you get out there in that gallery, and has written his favourite band in felt pen on his tummy. Bless his cotton socks. Isn't he gorgeous? He is the drummer in his band. Bless him. So actually it'd be much more sensible to say young people 16 to 18 learning a musical instrument at grade 4 and above, and young people 16 to 18 playing in a heavy metal band. Yeah. You know, they're completely different. Yeah, in every possible way. Or you might say people with at least one child under 5 living within 10 minutes walk of the library. Or you might say existing attenders who've bought tickets for at least 3 films in the past year but not one with subtitles. Actually, it occurs to me this is a really stupid example to give you because everything you have is subtitled. Whereas I think in Ireland, England, there's a real resistance to subtitles, yeah, which you lot don't have because you are so much more wonderful than we are with and how polite you are to do this whole day in English because we're too stupid to speak your languages. We're very grateful. Thank you. So L is for long term. Yeah? And this is our biggest problem in the UK and Ireland because actually we have schemes that mean you have to do it in 2 years. The European scheme, much as I love Creative Europe, you can't develop audiences in 2 years. You can't do it. And I know, Lisa, you're going to talk a lot more about why that's not possible. Yeah, absolutely. So how not to develop audiences? Well, I'm about to show you something that an audience development person in an organisation really, really did say to me. We did women last year. We're doing refugees now. Why is that so bad? Because actually we end up with audiences who feel abandoned and lonely and sad. Yeah, cool. So, sorry guys, I know we all get really excited by doing stuff and we all hate planning, but actually P is for plan is probably the most important one. So here's our Lord of the Rings audience development plan, and this is really, really important. You have to start with what you're trying to achieve as an organisation. Unless it's focused clearly on your mission, it ain't ever going to work. You need to understand your audience that you have at the moment, but also the community that you serve out there. Are they 2% of the population or 76% of the population? You need to understand that to get the right picture in your head. You need to choose target group or target groups rather than trying to do something for everyone. And you need to be clear about those, not woolly. You need to set clear objectives, otherwise you don't know whether you're going to succeed or not. And I do wonder whether I couldn't get a straight answer out of the opera guys who did that amazing online project with that trailer because they hadn't set clear objectives, so their evaluation wasn't good enough. And they were probably scared that I'd tell them off. Oh. You need to get inside the heads of your target groups. That's what Lisa's here for. Then you can work out what you want to do. And that's step 6. It's not step 1, it's step 6. Then it's about consulting to check you've not made very silly mistakes. And that's consulting with other people who've done similar things. It's consulting above all with the audience that you're trying to reach. And then work out how you will do it. And then plan how you're going to tell what worked and what didn't. Because the most successful audience development is stuff that carries on into the future in the long term. But if you didn't know what worked, how will you know what's worth doing again? So how not to develop audiences? You can't just get on with it. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I so much enjoyed. Please stay with me here for a few minutes. I so much enjoyed the exercise, and I thought now we have been sitting on our butts for an